Welcome to another edition of the Spyder's Web. I'm Spyder. Thank you very much for tuning in to YouTube, clicking on it. Hope you enjoyed last week's edition of the Spyder's Web. We got a lot of things to talk about, but before I get to that, let me show you where I actually do the Spyder's Web. It's called the Bucs room. And if you'll notice, the walls are Tampa Bay gray. They're Tampa Bay red. They're Tampa Bay black. You got the Mike Alstott jersey on the wall, along with the first Hall of Famer in Tampa Bay history, hopefully not the last, Leroy Selmon, the great late Leroy Selmon. And of course you got the pewter doors right there that set it all off. And if you look down below, go ahead and scan down below with the carpet, yes, it is Tampa Bay gray. And again, this is called the Bucs room. This is where we're going to be doing the Spyder's Web from now on. Again, we have a lot of things to talk about. Buccaneer free agency in full bloom. And finally, I can sit here and say the Buccaneers did what I thought they were going to do. I told you some of the free agents. It was time. It was time, guys, to spend money. And the Buccaneers did just that in free agency. Getting Vince Jackson, one of the top free agents in all of the free agent market, one of the top wide receivers who's going to provide speed. You get Carl Nix, the best left guard in free agency, and you get a guy like Eric Wright, who's not bad. He's probably a second corner. He's going to bring some stability to the secondary. Again, Vincent Jackson, you get him from San Diego, 6'5", 230. He's got the speed. He's a #1 proven wide receiver, and I don't think Tampa Bay's had that since Keyshawn Johnson. Again, they've gone out before. They tried to get Alvin Harper. He wasn't the answer. They tried to go out and get Bert Emanuel. He wasn't the answer. So now you have Vincent Jackson to add to your offense. Then the next day, what they do is they go out and get the best guard in football, and Carl Nix, 6'5", 340. This guy was a beast for New Orleans, and they didn't even run the ball. That's one of the things he's going to be asked to do, is help out with the running game and protect Josh Freeman. And then you go out and get Eric Wright, who again, probably most likely is a second corner. But he's going to bring stability to this secondary. He's technically sound. And he had questions coming into free agency with Aqib Talib and with Rondé Barber. And let's face it, Rondé Barber, if he comes back, he still could be your best defensive player on this team. You hope not. But again, he was one of your best players on your defensive team last year, and he's getting up there. Talib, again, there's questions if he's going to go to prison or if he's going to even be on this team. But you get a guy that's a solid tackler in Wright, who had a pretty good year with the Detroit Lions. So you got to give kudos to Mark Dominic and the Buccaneer organization, because what they've said in the offseason is that they were going to spend however much money it took to win. Well, I think they definitely proved that. Now, I want to know what you fans think about these moves. Is Vince Jackson the answer on offense? Is he going to provide Josh Freeman the weapon that he needs? Is Carl Nix going to be an offensive lineman that's going to provide holes for LeGarrette Blount? You hope so, because he did a great job in New Orleans, and he really didn't even get a chance to run block. He's probably going to get more of an opportunity. And do you think Eric Wright, again, is going to be a solid corner? Again, I hope so. I believe the Buccaneers did a hell of a job. Now, I think they still have some moves to make. There was a report that came out the first of free agency that Curtis Lofton was signed, sealed, and delivered by SI.com, but that wasn't necessarily the case. In fact, he may have priced himself out, and I got to say I'm kind of glad about that, because Curtis Lofton to me is a two-down linebacker. He's a great run stuffer, but he's not great in pass coverage. And what I mean by pass coverage is, again, we don't necessarily know what Tampa Bay, what kind of defense they're going to play. But here's the thing. Lofton as a player, as a linebacker, I don't think he's great in pass coverage. And when you run the Tampa 2, and again, I'm assuming the Buccaneers are going to run a Tampa 2 because of their personnel. He's not great in pass coverage. And when you're in this Tampa 2, what makes it different is that linebacker is asked to go out and cover deep. He's asked to do that. And I'm not sure if Lofton's very good at that. So hopefully the Buccaneers get this situation straightened out. I would like them to go after Stephen Tulloch. I think he's a better linebacker. I think he's a better fit, if you will, for the Tampa Bay system. But again, it bears to be watching. Right now, what the Buccaneers did, it's a home run. Everything they did, I think, in free agency, they said they were going to do, and they did it. And I want to know what you fans think. Do you think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did everything they said they were going to do? Do you think they spent it on the right free agents? Do you think these guys are going to come in here and make impacts? Are you satisfied with what the Buccaneers did? Are you going to go out there and watch this team? Are you excited? Do you think this team can be competitive? I think they got some work to do. But again, I think they did everything they said they were going to do. So I'm happy about that. Now, one of the other things we talked about in free agency, the biggest free agent of all, was Peyton Manning. Where would he end up? Well, I have to say that at this point I was wrong. And folks, listen, it's going to happen. Sometimes I'm going to be wrong about things. That's just the nature of the beast. We're going to be wrong about what we say, the predictions. That's what makes sports so interesting. We can come out here, we can make an ass out of ourselves, say where this player is going to go, where this player is not going to go. And this is the great thing about sports again. You don't know. And who would have thought that he would have picked the Denver Broncos? But it looks like that's exactly what he did. He picked the Denver Broncos today. And I think it's a good move. I think it makes Denver a Super Bowl contender, not only because Peyton Manning is a top-of-the-line quarterback, but because they have a great running game with Willis McGahee. They have some weapons on this team, Eric Decker, Demaryius Thomas, unproven, but they're pretty good. And you got to think that they're going to bring in guys like Jeff Saturday, Dallas Clark, maybe even Joseph Adai to add to this offense. Maybe even a Mike Wallace. There's a report out there today that the Broncos could be interested in Mike Wallace. That would be a great start. Again, you have the defense there already. It was a talented team. Now, this only works out again, and I say again, this only works out if Peyton Manning is healthy. And that's the big question. Is he healthy? Is he worth $95 million, which is reportedly what the Denver Broncos are going to pay him? 5 years, $95 million? A 36-year-old quarterback? Really, Denver? I don't know. I don't know if that's a great decision. It may blow up in your face. And I say this again because you don't know if Peyton Manning is going to be healthy. From all accounts, what he's thrown out, the videos that have come out on YouTube, from all reports, he's healthy. He's got his arm strength back. But I wonder how this guy's mental and physical capabilities are going to be affected when he takes that first hit. I wonder if when the ball wobbles, is he going to think he lost his arm strength? Maybe his arm strength won't be as strong as we think it is. It's a big-time risk, but I think it's a risk that the Denver Broncos had to take. Now, who are the two losers in this whole situation? Well, besides myself saying that the Miami Dolphins were going to get Peyton Manning, I would have to say the Miami Dolphins, Tim Tebow has to be one of the losers out of this. And let me just say this. Tim Tebow is never going to be mistaken for one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL. Never going to happen. A guy that passes for 46 completion percentage, a guy that has horrible footwork, a guy that throws some interceptions, and has this weird throwing motion and really is not great enough to read a defense, is never going to be considered one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL. But here's what he did. He led the Denver Broncos to the playoffs. They were a 1-4 team, and when he came in and started for the Denver Broncos, this team turned around. I mean, it wasn't just their defense. Give Tim Tebow credit. He was good last year. He improved in several areas of his game. So I think it's kind of a shame at this point that Tim Tebow is going to be out in Denver because I think he proved to be a starting quarterback. Now, again, as I take a drink, I thought that it was going to be very difficult to see Peyton Manning in Denver because simply John Elway has such a big ego. Honestly, there's not anybody better in John Elway's eyes besides John Elway. He is the greatest quarterback of all time. But I got to tell you something. John Elway, as talented as he was, had to have a running game and had to have a defense to win a Super Bowl. I'll give it to him. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. But a little part of me wants this thing to fail. And I'll tell you why. Last year, Tim Tebow, as a rookie quarterback, because it was his first year starting, The other year, he only started a couple of games. You can't really count that. This was his first real year to start. Instead of a guy like John Elway, who's had experience in the NFL, maybe would lend him some moral support, instead seemed like he was always downing Tim Tebow. The quarterback position isn't yours. You're not the starting quarterback. John Elway, as a rookie quarterback, was terrible. In fact, if you compare the statistics with Tim Tebow and John Elway, Tim Tebow was better. Tim Tebow was better because he had more touchdowns. Tim Tebow was better because he led his team to the playoffs. He was a guy that could turn it on in the fourth quarter. And again, I go back to this point. A little part of me is happy that Peyton Manning ended up in Denver and that they could possibly be a Super Bowl contender. But again, I'm hoping this kind of fails and blows up in John Elway's face, because I think the assumption that Tim Tebow isn't a quarterback in the NFL is kind of ridiculous. I think he proved that last year that he could be. And by no means, I'm not a Florida Gator fan. I'm not a Gator honk, okay? I'm a Florida State fan right here. Garnet and gold, that's what I bleed. By the way, they're out of the basketball tournament. They lost to Cincinnati last night, so we'll get to them later. But again, the whole Tim Tebow thing is kind of comical, because I don't think it's necessarily, his criticism is all based on the fact that he is a guy that passes for a low percentage, or a guy that has horrible footwork. I think it's more based on the guy's personal beliefs. I actually heard a report from another radio show that's very good. They did an interview with a local Denver guy, and the organization actually believed that Tim Tebow thought more about God and his family more than football. That to me is ridiculous, because Tim Tebow to me is a guy that does care about football. He's cared about football ever since high school. He's cared about football in college with the Florida Gators being a two-time national champion. And last year I think he had his mind on the prize for the Denver Broncos. So again, this criticism on, his religious beliefs and all this other stuff, listen, I'm not a Bible thumper, not by any means. Believe in what you believe in. I believe in God, but, I'm not going to criticize somebody that wants to put it out there. That's fine. That's great. I think we have to have more athletes that stand for something instead of fall for anything. And here's the point with Tim Tebow. I think he's going to land back on his feet. I think probably Jacksonville. I said this a couple years ago on my radio show that I think it would be a great opportunity for the Jaguars to go pick up a guy like Tebow. And he wouldn't even have to be good for them. He just sells tickets. Before he even throws a football, the fans love Tim Tebow. So it would make sense, especially considering that the Jaguars lost 17,000 in season tickets and they could barely sell out their stadium. So it makes sense. Blaine Gabbert's there, Chad Henne's there, but you get a fan favorite in Tim Tebow. Seems to work. If Miami, which we'll get back to in a second because I think they're the second loser out of this, gets him, then maybe you could build an offense around him. Now, I think it would be kind of difficult, but again, you have Matt Moore and Tim Tebow, and maybe you draft a quarterback for the future, so maybe that's a great opportunity for him. But again, I think it's a kind of a shame, and I really believe that John Elway and everybody around the NFL hasn't really given him a shot. And the thing that I like about Tim Tebow, and this is very important here, pay attention. I think Tim Tebow, the difference between him and everybody else in the NFL, any quarterback, and I'll give you an example of this. He's coachable. Anywhere that he's gone, he's been successful. Again, he's been successful in high school. He's been successful in college. There's a lot of critics, again, out for his job, saying he could not play quarterback, and he did everything that he could. He's coachable. Vince Young, when he came into this league, he had throwing motion problems. He had footwork problems. He couldn't barely read a defense. How did he work out? Because he's not a coachable guy. I will go and fight a battle with the guy that has the heart and the smarts of Tim Tebow. Period. I will. I really will. So I think the situation will work out for itself. It's an unfortunate situation for Tim Tebow, but I think he'll work out. And again, I hope the situation does work out in Denver. But it's a risk. You give a quarterback 5 years, $95 million, that's 36 years old on Saturday. I think that's a little bit questionable. So, On to other things here. Dwight Howard. And I wanted to get on this. I didn't get a chance to talk about this, but the trading deadline went and passed, and I thought that Dwight Howard was going to end up as a New Jersey Net, and he went back and forth, back and forth. I want to be with Orlando. I don't want to be with Orlando. I want to be with Orlando. Finally, he decided, and kudos to the Magic for basically pulling out all stops and getting this guy to agree to an opt-in. Basically saying, I will waive my opportunity to opt out next year and go to New Jersey, and I will stay with the Magic for another year. I thought that was genius because the Magic didn't want to be LeBron. And to get in on this conversation about Dwight Howard was coming out after the Heat game telling the Magic that they should roll the dice. Roll the dice. Let's roll the dice. Let's see if we can keep Dwight Howard, when good well and knowing that if the Magic made that trade and traded Howard to New Jersey, that New Jersey would not only give up first-round picks, but would give up players, which would hurt the team. Well, of course, Howard doesn't want the New Jersey Nets to do that. So, good job by the Magic. I'm glad that they got a chance to keep Howard, and I'm glad that finally an athlete decided to stay somewhere and play on his own. And again, make no mistake about it. I think Orlando is one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, but I think they still need a guy that can create his own shot and help Dwight Howard out. Now, I don't know how far they're going to go this year, but they've beaten some pretty good teams. They beat Miami a couple times this year. They beat Chicago. So we'll see how it works out. But I got to say this. If you're the Magic right now, you have to be thanking your lucky stars that Dwight Howard decided to sign that opt-in clause. Because if he didn't, you probably would have had another LeBron, another Shaq situation. And listen, let me get on this point here. With all these superstars trying to make their own all-star teams, like LeBron James, like Carmelo Anthony, it hasn't worked out. New York hasn't won anything. Miami hasn't won anything, so it's not the cure-all, okay? You have cases of the Boston Celtics, but these guys weren't getting together and recruiting each other. It just happened. The Lakers, they have Kobe Bryant, but they went out and got Gasol. It wasn't a recruitment. It wasn't so planned. And I always bring this back, and people try to make this comparison. Maybe I'm getting a little bit off subject, but I gotta get this off my chest here, because again, this is the Spyder's Web. This is what we do. We talk about sports. What you think, what I think. You tell me. What do you think about things, and I'll tell you what I think. And with LeBron James, they always make comparisons about LeBron James being the next Michael Jordan. It's possible. It's possible to make that comparison. Here's why. He's got the skills. He can shoot. I mean, he's got unbelievable athletic ability. Now, here's where the comparison dies. In the fourth quarter, he disappears. He doesn't have that killer instinct. He doesn't. When's the last time he's made a big-time shot? I can think of maybe one against the Magic in the Eastern Conference semifinals. That's the only time I can think. That's the only time. Okay? Not only that, but when Jordan could not beat the Detroit Pistons, when he could not get any further, did he call Magic Johnson and say, "Hey, Magic, come and play for me"? No, he didn't. He decided to make his team better, to make himself better. That's where the comparison lies. So all these punks in the NBA trying to get all these all-star teams together because they think it's the wave of the future, that it's going to give them a championship, that's ridiculous. Just play within your team, make your team better, make everybody around you better. Well, that's been the Spyder's Web. Again, I hope you like what you heard. Tell me what you think. What about this Peyton Manning move to Denver? What do you think? Is it going to blow up? Is it going to be great? What should Tim Tebow do? Where is he going to end up? Is he going to end up with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Miami Dolphins, or an unknown team? How about the Dwight Howard situation? Is he really going to stay in Orlando? It seems like he's going to stay. He's got to stay for a year. So will the Magic make that move? Again, this has been the Spyder's Web. I'm Spyder, and I'm out.